Hi, Misha here, and after years of contemplating doing it, and after recently kind of teaching myself how to get music into these videos, hey, it's easy for you, it's not so easy when you can't see. We're finally going to tackle the Smashing Pumpkins. Why the Smashing Pumpkins? Arguably, it's my favorite band because it's kind of the soundtrack of my childhood, teenage years, and even my 20s. It was around for a lot of my life. I do sincerely like the music, but it's so personally significant. And honestly, I think there's a lot to recommend the band. Interesting lyrics, very, very good guitar, excellent drums, and the singing is very unique. I like it, but I can understand why some would not. And it often gets lumped in with grunge, and I guess in some ways, in spirit it is. But whereas grunge is the Seattle scene, the Smashing Pumpkins came out of Chicago. Also, it's entirely possible that Billy Corgan cuckolded Nirvana. Yeah, it's quite possible. He and Courtney Love slept together, and Cobain found out, and that was right around. We'll get there in the whole thing. It's the thing. Now, in these music review videos, I'm mostly just going to do one episode like I did with the Gary Newman. But Smashing Pumpkins, they're different. They're special. And while I don't think I have the largest Smashing Pumpkins CD and vinyl collection, I bet I have more than anyone you personally know. I looked at my computer because years ago I scanned all of them in to make it easier, and it looks like I have about 160 albums, singles, EPs, lives, all 160 things all together. Although again, some are like singles, so there's only 2 or 3 songs on them. And songs, well, a lot. As in about 1,800. Again, many are live, many demos, many acoustics. In fact, I was kind of known for being the guy who has acoustic versions of everything when I was in high school and college. And this video, we're going to go back to the beginning. Or really even before the beginning. And so this is going to be more history driven, but I'm not going to do a biography of Smashing Pumpkins or Billy Corgan, because when I was a kid and a teenager, well, for one thing, we didn't have internet, but for another, I actively really didn't get involved in the personal lives of the musicians. I kind of felt like it would ruin the music for me. Plus, I really wasn't that interested. I'm not interested in the lives of actors, even if I really like their films. And I just wasn't really interested in the lives of the musicians. I wanted to appreciate their art for being art. Of course, I knew the big Pumpkins events. I mean, it's hard not to know when the accidental death took place, or when Darcy left the band. Obviously, I knew when they broke up. And of course, we all knew about Billy Corgan's ego. But what's not talked about as much is his compassion. He may have an ego, but he's also done lots of work for charities and for disabled people. In fact, he's been a huge advocate for his younger brother who is disabled. And of course, in my position, I find that very good. He's also known to be a good, loyal friend, if also at times a bit arrogant and argumentative. But you know what? I'll take an arrogant, argumentative friend who's loyal over an affable friend who ditches you. Hate that. So, yeah, I think a lot's been said about his negatives, but I think his positive aspects often get overlooked. Plus, hey, he loves cats like I do, so there's that. So we're going to go back, all the way back, to little Billy Corgan in high school. He was born in 1967 to William Corgan Sr. and his wife Martha. And I mention this only because Sr. was a quite well-respected and gifted blues and a little bit of jazz musician. So Billy grew up with music. However, his father did not want him to follow in his footsteps. He wanted him to go to college and do whatever. But he was always interested in music, especially from the age of about 8, 9, 10, when he got his first guitar. And he formed his first band in 1983 when he was just 16. I think it was a Coat of Eyes was the name. And I don't have any surviving music from that. But the band would expand to involve 3 members. Corgan on guitar, vocals, some songwriting. Roesing, he would do drums. And Mainers, he would do bass guitar. And so they would graduate high school in 1985 in Chicago, and feeling like there wasn't much for them there, they would decide to move to St. Petersburg, Florida, a place that J-Ro spent quite a bit of time in, so whenever I think about this, I always think of him. And this is when they reformed the band under the name The Mart. And, well, I don't have surviving music from the first band, but I do have some from The Mart. Take a listen. It's memorable. That track is Death of a Mind. Keep that in mind because it's actually relevant to Smashing Pumpkins a bit later. They were considered kind of a goth rock band, a little bit of edge to them, but they were a very loud band. Early on, especially, Black Sabbath was a major influence on Corgan, but really lots of stuff. They were kind of living in people's places, bumming around, being 18, 19 years old, broke as a joke, trying to make it down in Florida. And they actually would record a number of songs. And this would start a lifelong thing. Whatever he is, Billy Corgan is prolific in writing songs. Some artists will agonize over writing 4 songs for years, like Trent Reznor. And I respect that. Billy Corgan, in 4 years, could really produce 100 songs, maybe even 400. And they would mostly not be complete shite. They might not be, hits, but, they're not complete rubbish either. But he had to start. He had to learn. And it seems like early on, his guitar playing by this point, he's been playing a number of years, is improving. But he's still trying to settle into vocals. And I get it with his voice, especially at this young of an age. He's trying to find his style.
I want to understand you, but you say no. I want to see inside you, but you won't let anyone go. Do you stay back?
So yeah, throughout 85 and into 86, they would perform about 24 live shows as a group. They would have a few different recording sessions in little home studios or little private studios, and there were never any official releases. They're all bootlegs or copies of tapes, and that's what mine are, of course. There's no official pressing. I mean, in 1985, 86, no little bands making CDs. It's all cassettes, and they wouldn't have had the money to do records of any note. But they did do a lot of songs. And I do have some live stuff, and I do have some other stuff. And here's another kind of early song that would stick in rotation for a while. It's called Spite Face.
I was built one despite your face, and another mouth will come to take its place. And I'll speak and speak, but I may try.
Initially, the group, the three kids, left Chicago feeling like they couldn't make it there. Unfortunately, St. Petersburg wasn't treating them a whole lot better. So after just a few months down there, mayors, whatever, MEINERS, would just up and leave the band. So their bassist is gone. So you have Roesing and Corgan. You have a drummer and guitar vocalist. But with their friend gone, they very reluctantly, and again very broke, moved back to Chicago. And at least for a time, Corgan bums a place on his dad's couch. And the Marked would continue in Chicago in 1986 for a time, even recording some new songs. But this wouldn't last for much longer.
Sweating to death and nowhere to go. Ladies and gentlemen.
9 months after they moved back to Chicago, the band would officially part ways, as they feared it just never had success. In the 1987, Corgan would actually join someone else's band, something he rarely would do in his life, playing some shows with them, working part-time. This never really went much of anywhere, but it would lead him to meet a gentleman at the record store, James Iha. And in the 1988, now we're getting to the formation of the band, but it would actually take a little bit more time. They would do a recording session in early 1988, and after this they would adopt the name The Smashing Pumpkins, often to shorten to Smashing Pumpkins. But this time it's just Corgan and Iha. And in summer of that year, I think it was about July, they would drop their first demo tape. They would print off several copies. They would copy off. These are all hand done. They had hand drawn artwork. I think Iha did a lot of the art, and then they would write the track list. It was a little EP, or demo cassette if you prefer, with 4 tracks on it. And here is the first track off this little album. The album's called Nothing Ever Changes, and the first track is called The Vigil.
And I thought I knew, and though I knew, you know it suits me well, I'd wait for you, I'd dream about you.
So we're starting to see a bit of a familiar sound here, but it is still very much a work in progress. Now, you heard drums on that track. The first 2 tracks on the album have drums. In fact, Roesing would do the drumming. Why he didn't actually join the band, I don't know. Again, I never really got too much into the personal lives. Maybe he was working, maybe he didn't want to. Either way, he did the first 2 tracks. The next 2 tracks, Holiday and Cross, though, got a wonderful 80s drum machine. Here you go.
Rushing woods through sound and killing us through me.
Well, there are worse things, but it's a drum machine. And that's not really the way the band's going. They are kind of getting less hard rock goth and a little bit softer. I hate to call it emo, but sometimes it did sound a little emo, at least that version of a little more thing. But you also are starting to see some softer sides come out and more of Billy's guitar playing, which I thoroughly enjoy. And he's starting to settle into some vocals. He still needs to put some spit and polish on it, but he's kind of starting to find his voice and tone. But the band's not there yet. You have the two guys, they're both guitarists. Yes, Billy can play bass. What he can't do is drum. But first, that summer, he gets in an argument with a girl at a concert, and eventually Darcy joins the band. I think starting to play with them, at least more than just a handful of rehearsals. She kind of appears in mid to late summer of 1988, I think around August. And so now they have a bassist, and it's a quartet. Excuse me, quartet. You know what I mean? It's tritet? I don't know. It's a tit. So having an actual bassist helps, gives it more layers, and gonna be honest, Iha at times could be quiet. Darcy would absolutely call Corgan out on this bullshit, which is what someone like him needs. But what the band needs is a drummer, and they want to play more live shows, and that's kind of the feedback they're getting. You need a drummer, and of course, enter Jimmy Chamberlain. And after practicing a bit with the band in September, they have their first live show as a quartet under the name The Smashing Pumpkins on October 5th, 1988 at the Metro in Chicago, a place that Billy had wanted to play for years. And so it's kind of fitting that the very first song they play starts off with Jimmy's contributions. Take a listen. That song is entitled There It Goes, and it would appear on live sets for years, but we never really got an official hard release on vinyl or CD until years later with the Pisces Iscariot. Not the regular edition, no, the deluxe edition that came out decades later. But we'll get there eventually in this long series. I just picked it because it is the very first song they played in that set, and it starts off with Jimmy. And by Billy Corgan's own admission, he freely says Chamberlain was the best musician in the band. I get it. Corgan is a songwriter, a poet, an artiste, and a hell of a guitar player. But Jimmy, he's just a machine. He's a drummer. That's what he does. He's a musician. Although he has sang a time or two on some songs, but he just wants to beat some drums. And that gives, along with Darcy's bass, some real oomph to the band. And having four people, it's good. If you have three, two might be fighting or two might be colluding against the other one, and there's always an odd man out, it seems like, when you have three people. Four, well, kind of balances stuff. And pretty quickly the dynamic seemed to be kind of Billy and Chamberlain and Iha and Darcy. They were sleeping together. I'll let you guess which set. The others weren't. Hey, whatever. So that was their first show. And they go back into the studio to make some more demos early in 1989, thanks to some contacts that Darcy helped him with. And on March 28th of that year, they release The Smashing Pumpkins, self-titled EP or demo. Honestly, I think Corgan wanted to make it a full-length album, but he wasn't ready yet. He really wasn't. In my opinion, a vast improvement over the Marked, but still not there. At any rate, here's the first song, and see what you think. That was called Jennifer Ever, and the first time I think I ever heard it myself was downloading it off the internet. Years later, I would actually get a pressed CD. There was a company out of Europe that would actually make not CDRs, but actual real CDs. You call them imports or bootlegs. Usually if you see stuff like that on Amazon today that's unofficial, it just says import. And yeah, I actually ended up selling a lot of those in college, different bands and stuff, to make a little extra scratch. I had a connection over there, and would give him an order sheet, and he would ship me over. And a little bit of a gray market thing, but far more legal than dealing weed. This EP or short album had 6 tracks, and we will see some familiar songs. In fact, 2 songs that were carried over from the Marked were Death of a Mind, now renamed Sun, and it's gone through a couple of iterations over the years. This is the Smashing Pumpkin version. And another one that has stuck around, and the reason I pointed it out earlier, is Spite Face. So yeah, this is our first release with all 4 members in the band, even though Nothing Ever Changes was technically the first. It only had 2 members. It was just, in name. The Smashing Pumpkins was the one. They would continue to play shows, so they would record more demos that summer, and then in October of 1989, they would release Moon. And this was a longer effort, pretty much an album length. It was 9 tracks, and in the 80s, a lot of bands' full-length LPs were 8, 10, 11 songs, because they were meant to fit on a record. And so yeah, and we do have some interesting tracks on it. This one to me is getting a little more of that Pumpkins sound. Take a listen. And we see more and more newly written songs, and this is one thing I really do like about Billy Corgan. He doesn't just recycle and refine the same old songs over and over. I mean, he will occasionally, but he's always got new songs. And at this period, almost every new song is better than the older ones. And so this is when I think he's starting to really hone his song writing craft. In fact, one song from Moon in particular would go forward and really follow the band for the rest of their career. Here's one of the earliest releases of Rhinoceros. So at this point, there are 3 demo tapes released, but all are self-published. How many of the first? Nothing Ever Changes? No, I don't think even they know. They were handmade, hand-copied. In fact, according to the internet, I just looked, there's only 1 original copy known to exist that's not in the band's archives. So, very small numbers. The next 2 albums, The Smashing Pumpkins and Moon, they actually made 500 copies each of, give or take. So, a pretty significant number compared to maybe a couple of dozen before. And these still had handwritten labels and kind of homemade artwork, but they were sold. Looking back, it seems like people said they charged about $5 for a cassette at these shows. So they're kind of earning their due at this time. I think for any good band, success shouldn't come too fast, too early. And this is them paying their dues in 1989 and into 1990. And they're not signed yet, but they're working on it. And Corgan's continuing to work on his vocals. Jimmy, well, he was always an excellent drummer. Iha, I've always liked Iha. He's kind of the cool, calm guy. I don't know, I just like him. He actually does branch out some into songwriting too. And Darcy even tries her hand at singing once in a while, which is an interesting effort. They're all kind of exploring themselves, and they become kind of local celebrities, if not legends, in the Chicago region. But major success continues to elude them, much as it had done with the Marked years earlier. But of course, this wouldn't last for too much longer. 1991 would be their year. But we'll have to tackle their first release, the Gish era, next time. I want to keep these videos reasonable length. And again, the next one won't be so much a history like this. It'll be more a music review and my thoughts, because a lot of these songs I didn't hear till later in life, and most of them I wouldn't say are good. If nothing else, the recording quality isn't great, but they're very interesting. And I love early stuff, showing where a band comes from. I do that with a lot of my bands I really enjoy. David Bowie, The Cure, I've got a lot of their early stuff. Pink Floyd, 9 Inch Nails, I've got his early stuff. It's just interesting to see where they came from, to see the bones, the rough sketch of what would become a great band. And it also just shows you they didn't come out of the ether. And they definitely were not riding on the coattails of Nirvana or Pearl Jam. They were contemporary or even ahead. If you count the Marked, Billy Corgan started doing music before Kurt Cobain. If you wanted to start with 1988, it's pretty, same. Yeah. And again, they had their own sound. Billy Corgan has said in interviews that everything's been done and probably done better than he could do it. So the best you can do is just play the music you want to play, give kind of tribute to the bands you like, and hope you entertain people. And he has said he does want to be an entertainer, and not just, he kind of wants to be the classic rock star from the 60s and 70s. Bands that he admired like Pink Floyd, Rush, Cheap Trick, Led Zeppelin, and of course David Bowie, because we all admire David Bowie who like music. I don't hear him talk about 80s bands as much. He does talk about 70s a bit more, but I'm sure there's plenty of 80s bands he enjoyed. I think he did mention The Cure a number of times and has high praise. Later on in life, he would have extremely high praise for bands like Radiohead, which is not a controversial opinion. Radiohead is excellent. I know guys who that's their favorite band. I think they came about just maybe a little bit too late to inject themselves into my young life, but albums like Gish and Siamese Dream, I was the exact right age when those came out to really appreciate it. And then Melancholy, just what do you say? But also, controversial opinion, I love Adore. And in fact, it came out, my mood at the time when it came out was perfect for Adore. But we'll get there. I'm just kind of giving a little bit of a preview. So yeah, I'm going to definitely talk more about my favorite songs and my least favorite songs. Maybe some sentimental things, but these early ones, there's really no sentimental value aside from just discovering the early band and discovering the songs. Years later, Corgan would actually post some demo sessions from real-time studios on the website to download for free. But back in the early and mid-90s, all we had were bootleg cassettes or maybe bootleg CDs eventually, and that's kind of what I did. I think the one I got was copyrighted, it's dated 1995, but it was fun kind of seeking them out. And all the songs I will play for you throughout this review, all these series, are actually ones that I own hard copy, unless there's no way to do it at all. But I always had a thing about actually having the real album. Gotta do that. Gotta have that. But next time, let me know what you think of this. Any suggestions? Let me know, because I do want to kind of do the definitive series on the Smashing Pumpkins, which, by real extension is about Billy Corgan, because he's the only true permanent member, for better or worse. Then again, any person who's been in the industry for decades, they end up effectively being a solo act. Very, very few bands stay together with their original lineup for decades. It just doesn't happen. Oh well. And a lot of my favorite artists are actually solo. Again, Nine Inch Nails is effectively a solo act, or at least a revolving door act. David Bowie, Pink Floyd, it's a band, but I mean, look at the rotation there. We had 3 lead characters to that. But yes, indeedy. And if you'd like to know more about any individual album or song, just put it in the comments and we can discuss. Or if you're looking for something, hit me up and I'm happy to share what I can with anyone. Because this early stuff, I'm quite sure it's not copyrighted or anything. But, it's just nice to share the love and appreciation of this early, rare, cool stuff. This is Misha, and thank God it finally started to rain after teasing us for days here. Catch you very soon with Gish next time.